Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Spotlight Hour. Today, we have a very, very exciting, cool guest with us. Andy, go ahead and introduce yourself for the people who don't know about you and your work yet.
Yeah, thank you guys. I'm Andy Kaehr, like the one you drive, just spelled really different. I'm an LMFT, a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I live and practice in the suburban Twin Cities. So up in Minnesota, as they say, where it's cold and dark this time of year. And I've been here in practice since 2011, and I moved up here from Indiana, where I grew up in 2007. Don't hold that against me, anybody listening, but here I am.
Andy, thanks you so much for being here. I want to pick up right where we were at before we actually hit record. Though we were talking about the relationship of clinicians who are just starting out getting their licenses and going through that process and joining group practices, and how that process can kind of be exploitative at times. Go ahead, pick back up where you were because you are.
Yeah. Well, I was saying to you guys, I'm old enough to remember life before the really hard mental health crunch or crisis or clinician shortage, whatever you want to call it. Back when I started and went through graduate school, I didn't find out from my advisor in graduate school till about three quarters through that once I graduated with my master's degree in marriage and family therapy, that was really only the halfway process for being able to independently practice. I was like, "Well, what do you mean halfway process?" "Oh yeah, you've got 1,000 hours of client contact you got to do, and then 200 hours of supervision." And we're talking about all these requirements, and I thought, well, the admissions counselor told me that I could just hang out my shingle once I graduated, and like, well, not really. And I was like, "Oh, so they just kinda told me that to sign on the dotted line, right?" They didn't tell me about all the other work. Uh, and so when I started, we really didn't have many opportunities. Um, Pre-licensed people or clinical trainees, as they're called in my state, weren't offered positions in group practices to see clients in an outpatient setting, right? Like, you have your office, and then you have a front desk person who manages your schedule or checks people in, and then they come and then they see you and talk to you for 45, 50 minutes, and then, "Thanks, I'll see you next week," kinda thing. We couldn't do that even though we were trained to do that. So most of us had to do either in-home, therapy work in hospitals or day treatment settings, doing things that weren't really what we were trained to do. A lot of them were more like crisis management services or um, what I call maintenance services, working with clients that had significant needs. And what we did was work to keep them from needing a higher level of care, not necessarily to progress to actually feeling better, doing better, reaching goals. Their goals were more about keeping them from getting worse, which was really, really disappointing to have this training, to help clients achieve their goals and, feel better, do better, all the things that I thought I was gonna do, and then the opportunities to do that just really weren't there, because our system wasn't structured to do that once we graduated. So it was a big, like, mind job for me, and the worst part about it was that these jobs paid so low and the work was so hard, and we had to have a master's degree to do this work. So it was like, "Welcome to mental health. Here's your 18 bucks an hour." Even though your friends at FedEx, are making 25 an hour and have benefits, here's your 18 bucks an hour and you'll take it and you'll like it. So it was very like, um, I guess disheartening probably isn't the strong enough word, but that's how it was back then.
It's it's a ridiculous process that you have to go through to get to that point. I mean, it's hard to sustain yourself off of 18 bucks an hour, especially when you more likely than not got master's degree level student loans
Students, right?
to pay back as well.
And then undergrad loans for a lot of folks too. Yeah, like how are you going to pay those back? And or start a family, buy a house. You thought you were going to do those things when you graduated? Just kidding, right? You can wait a while. And I heard a lot of this too. You got to pay your dues, Andy. You got to pay your dues. So when I would talk to veterans and clinicians, who had been in the field for a long time, they would tell me that when I would complain about how much I and my colleagues, folks in our stage of our career development were struggling, you got to pay your dues. You got to pay your dues. And I'm like, pay my dues to who? Like I already paid. I went to school. I got the papers. So it was like almost like a hazing, kind of experience for us. And I vowed at that point, like if I ever became a supervisor to help people who were working towards licensure, that just because it sucked for me, I wasn't going to make it suck for them.
So, I love that point because you've had your practice for 13 years now.
That's
Have you
correct.
been able to put that into play in your practice?
Yeah, I didn't set out to become a group practice owner. My practice really started as a protest to the lack of opportunity. As I mentioned, there really wasn't much for us to do when we first started, and so I said I'm going to start a practice, incorporate, create a business, do all the things, and even if I see one client this year, in an outpatient capacity somewhere, it'll be my client, right? And it'll be who I wanna see, and, I won't have to, deal with, well, you gotta pay your dues kind of thing and deal with, really difficult cases, which, I mean, the people need service no matter where they are. The problem was that the work was hard, the pay was terrible, and the particular place that I looked for or that I worked for at the time treated us as a commodity, right? They expected us to work for a little while and then quit, and they would just hire another person. It was their entire business model, actually. And there are still a lot of places that kind of function that way, although the tide is turning to not allow them to continue that, which I'm all here for that. But I started my practice out of protest, and sure enough, I had one client that year. One client, so I met my goal. I met my goal.
So, what I love, like, so much about your story and the way you kind of framed and said that right there is that it combines, like, the cornerstone of entrepreneurship with mental health, which is such a fun thing to see for practice owners because that cornership of entrepreneurship is seeing something done that can be improved. You look at something, a system, a structure, and say, "I can make this, but I can do this, I can do it better. I can make this work more efficiently." And it doesn't really seem like you hesitated on that, which is
I had a little ready, fire, aim in me, which,
yeah.
after 13 years, I think I've almost gotten rid of that. I don't know, my associate clinicians may may beg to differ, or my wife, if you talk to her, but I decided there was pretty low risk in starting something and then finding, literally, I my first office was a broom closet in a church, that had carpeting in it for some strange reason, but, it was free. So I thought, "Well, how can I fail here if my overhead is super low, right? And I'm not, beholden to a $2,500 a month lease, free office space. Free is still free, right?" And the clients that I saw that year didn't care. They just wanted help. So I thought, well, there's very low risk in doing this. Um, why don't I try it and see what happens? It didn't scare me as much as I felt like I had to do something and to own something, to feel like I was making a difference in my career and in my community.
I absolutely love that, man. That's so exciting to hear. It's a common theme among all the therapists that we get to talk to, just driven by that sense of selflessness and care for the community and want the need to give back and to support it. So thank you, first off, for doing what you do and taking that, ready, aim, fire.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, definitely. Ready, fire, aim was, might as well have been my business model. I'm sure it was, not the way to do any of it, if you read the textbooks about how to start a business, and I did it.
let's say, yeah, but we're here now, 13 years later. You run a successful, exciting group practice. What was the journey like from getting that one client to kind of scaling it up to where you are now? What were like the marketing pieces that worked for you to get out there, get in front of more people, and see the people that you wanted to see?
Yeah, that is a great, a great question. I mean, the practice was always, part-time up up until 2021. So really for 10 years, it was very part-time. I had another kind of day job, because, I needed benefits. So, we were starting our family. We have my wife and I have 3 kids. She's also a therapist, and so she was in the same stage of career growth as I was, meaning just starting out and, impoverished. So we kinda had a necessity as the mother of all invention moment, and, I had a day job where I had some benefits. I worked for, a school and school-based like, I worked in school-based mental health for a while. I worked for a college for an actual, like, literal calendar year, and then I worked for a county mental health and social services system for about 7 years. Um before taking the leap to really focus on the practice full time, growing it, more full time. I had another contract position, and then the contract was eliminated, and so I said, "Well, fine, I guess I'll do this." So it was a circuitous route to kind of get there, but the risk again of failing was always tempered by, uh, I have other sources of income, and I'm not just focused on the practice, which I think helped me feel more free to grow it because it wasn't as scary or as risky when clients didn't show up, or when my marketing efforts failed, or when I had a really low week in terms of like billable sessions. I didn't have to panic because I knew that I had something else to rely on.
So what were the actual marketing pieces that worked best for you?
Yeah.
You doing over that first 10 years, right? Because that was the time when obviously the method that we love most and find the most cost effective and time effective to get clients is a lot of like SEO, paid advertising through Google, Facebook, platforms
Mm.
like that. But those didn't really kick off too much until 2015, 2016. So those first 4 years were, with mostly the absence of that, you still had some features, but then nowhere near what they are today. And
Yeah.
then accelerate that to 2021, where you decided to kick this into, 6th gear and go full time. What were those pieces that kind of helped along the way?
Yeah, I had some directory listings for a while. I've used some online directories. One of them I've kept, uh, probably since I started. One of them I've dropped. I'm not sure about where people stand. I won't mention them. They're pretty popular though. You can find them on the Googles, right? If you're interested in directories. So those worked for a while, to get some clients. I also had a pretty wide network of other therapists that I knew or people in the community. I worked with a lot of folks in churches, and so my career before I became a therapist, I worked with youth, like young people and adolescents, and so I had a pretty wide network of people that, "Oh, Andy's a therapist now, let's send our angry teenage boys to him." So, I had worked with a lot of angry teenage boys for the beginning of my career, and, I was grateful, and I could help, and I could do that and help them and work well with them and their families, so that was, kind of a built-in network that I already had here in the Twin Cities, to work with. And then later on, I really niched down into doing couples therapy. So I discovered Gottman couple therapy method in 2016 and have gotten trained all the way through level 3. There aren't too many of us that have that level of training in my area, and so I think couples kind of seek that out now. And I hear from, a lot of the couples that I work with, yeah, so and so therapist sent me, and I'm like, I don't know who that is. So they're hearing about me either from our website or from, other therapists or warm referrals from existing clients, which I think are always the best referrals, or past clients, right? Oh yeah, I have a friend, my brother saw Andy and he was really great or whatever, or saw, like, so those past client referrals I think really helped more, and, help me more now than they did before when I first started, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. I love that too because when you've got current client and past client referrals, that's just a testament to how much you care, how much effort and work you put into helping all of your clients. To the point where maybe, they haven't worked with you for, I don't know, a few months, maybe even a year or 2, but they still remember and accredit you with all this success for, taking them from where they were to where they wanted to be and where they are now. To the point where you're like, "Hey, if you're struggling with any of this, this is your guy."
Yeah, I think that that's the best source of referrals, of good referrals that continue the work, that are interested in the work for therapists. And probably, and maybe it's just my corner of the world, probably the one that's utilized the least in terms of an actual marketing strategy. Everybody wants to, go to SEO, go to the internet, go to, workshops and flyers and all those things. And it's like, yeah, don't forget about your best marketers, which are your existing clients or your past clients who had good outcomes with you as a clinician.
Exactly. I'd say it's such a valuable resource just, having people share their experiences honestly and openly. What about, for the rest of your team? Because you've got, and yourself included, 7 people in your practice now, 7 clinicians. For those people who have recently joined or just kind of getting started out when they're working with you, if they're not coming over with their own, their own full caseload, what kind of advice are you, giving to them on how to get to that full caseload?
Yeah, it really depends on where they are in their career. A clinician who's been, independently licensed as a therapist for 5+ years is needing to niche down into some kind of specialty area if they haven't already. So if they're in that spot where they've been practicing for a while and they've been licensed for a while and they're kind of seeing like a generalist caseload where they're not really sure, what they want to do or who they can help the best, that's my advice or my work with them is to say, okay, who is the client that you have the best outcomes with? What type of client? What's their socioeconomic status, their demographic, their like, their presenting issue, their concern, and like those are the people that you need to be reaching, like trying to go after those people, not just kind of spray and pray, hoping that somebody will come in your door because you've got I almost said it, you've got a directory listing, right, or an internet thing somehow. No, like you need to go to the pond where the clients, so to speak, the fish that you're looking for, are swimming, not expecting them to find you or to come to you, by accident. So that's what I tell, those folks as they've come into my practice to practice with me. If they're just starting out, I actually don't advise new therapists to niche down until they are licensed. And the reason is because so much of what we learn about being a therapist happens in the years under supervision post graduation from graduate school, right? So it's kind of like our residency, like for doctors, we learn how to actually put the theory into practice in those 2, 3, 4 years it takes to get licensed. And there's a lot of basic stuff that needs to be like attained, learned, mastered before we learn a specific theoretic orientation like, an EMDR, or we work with obsessive compulsive disorder, and so we get a bunch of training in that specific area. No, there's too much to learn before you niche down in that stage of the career, and so folks that come to, practice with me, it's more about, like, pick a handful of different people, right, that you're interested in, if it's couples, right, if it's families with teenagers, if it's young children, right, before you try and niche down into a very specific specialty area, because if you don't know how to join and sit and listen and be with people, uh, it doesn't pay. I mean, the evidence is clear again and again and again that the best predictor of success in therapy is the therapeutic relationship, the quality of the relationship. And so if somebody is trying to niche down before they know how to build a quality relationship, that outcome isn't going to be good for that client. And then they're not going to come back, and they're not going to stay, right? If the clinician is trying to get them to stay. So it in shorter answer to your question, depends on where they are in their career.
And if, for all those of you who are listening, I hope you are taking notes because Andy is dropping some absolute here. You got something you wanted to pop in and say?
Absolutely. Andy, two things. One, a quick challenge for you, my friend.
Yeah.
A 60-second masterclass. You're a therapist in 2024, just starting out. What's the first thing you would do to go and find some clients for yourself?
A 60-second masterclass. You're a brand new therapist. What would you do to go and find clients for yourself? Um, Man, put me on the spot here, Alex. Sorry. Uh, if okay, can you give me can you give me more, info? Can you drill down on that data?
Sure.
Find it like a therapist who's been in practice for a while, or somebody's like brand new. My degree's in my hand. I'm entering the fields, to actually put my big kid pants on and be a real therapist.
Let's say you just got out, got your degree in your hands, and you want to start a private practice. Everything is all as it should be. You're starting up your own private practice and you want to find some clients.
Easy, totally. Find a good supervisor. Find a good supervisor. So many clinicians think and treat the clinical supervision training process, postmasters training process before becoming independently licensed as like I got to just get through this. I got to check the box. I got to get my hours. I got to say the thing. I got to do the thing. And then I'll be able to do what I really want to do. Okay, great. That's not what it's for. It's not what it's for. Finding a good supervisor to challenge and grow and learn from, who's been in the field for a while, who actually does good supervision, and there is good supervision and there is bad supervision. We don't have time to talk about that. Finding a good quality supervisor who can share and talk about all of the things that the clinician who just graduated, the therapist who just graduated, needs to learn is critical, absolutely critical, because they're the ones that are going to help that clinician know about how to find clients, how to practice ethically, the licensing requirements, how to not practice outside your scope, how to not do something unethical by accident, right? Because there's so much they don't teach us in graduate school on purpose about how to actually practice. That's the supervision part. It's not meant to be treated as a phone it in, do the thing, show up, get your hours, get out. If it feels like that, find a new supervisor or talk to the one you have about how to make a change. Getting clients means doing the right stuff as a therapist to actually attract the right client. That's step one.
Sounds like you need a little more than 60 seconds for the next step.
That was not 60 seconds, was it? See, man.
No, that's a great point. I think supervisors definitely can really empower you to propel your career forward as it should be. And the way, from what it sounds like, you're empowering your own team and people who are coming on board your team with not just giving them the tools, but the experience they need to move forward. And with that in mind, you have a lot of young people coming in, probably messaging you consistently saying, "Can you be my supervisor? Yes or no?" How do you approach a new person that has just reached out to you about wanting you to be the supervisor?
Yeah. So a lot of the supervision process, they think that they're vetting me and that's only what's going on. No, I'm vetting and interviewing them too, right? Because I'm not for everybody. I know that. My supervisor, the first one that I had was free, right? The agency that I worked for, it was free, and it was so bad I didn't go. I fired them. I stopped going. I was like, nah. Just like a therapist has to vibe with their client has to vibe with them. That's a really squishy, imprecise word that I know has a lot of weird connotations. It's a therapeutic relationship. The same is true with a supervisor too. The way I approach clinical work, the way I teach, the way I model things may not work for everybody, and that's okay. So I fired the free supervisor and I found my own that I paid for, right? Out of pocket. And I loved her. I went to her house. She did supervision on her four-season porch. If anybody from the Twin Cities is listening, they'll probably know what I'm talking about. And, we'd sit and we'd talk and she helped me. She supported me. She let me cry. She let me complain. She let me vent. And then she would challenge me. And she had been practicing since 1962. Her license was in like the double digits. My license is 2,551. So this is somebody who had been around for a long time and really knew their stuff. And it was worth me paying for out of pocket to see the supervisor to learn because it was part of my training, right? Was it included in graduate school? No. And it was worth paying for. So when I get a call from a supervisee, potentially, I'm vetting them as much as they're vetting me. So we have a conversation, and we talk about our practice interests. We talk about our graduate school experiences. We talk about what's important to us in a therapeutic relationship, what could be important in a supervisory relationship, learning styles. It's all fair game.
As you're growing your practice, there's one risky step, right? Accepting somebody new to your practice, especially if it's somebody who's just got out of grad school and they say, I want to do this, right? It's a very, very important process to know who you're going to be working with and what you can bring to the table, as well as what they can bring to the table. In your years of growing your practice since post-COVID, what has been, I guess, what's a mistake or something you've learned that has really helped you in not just a team setting, but personally as well?
There's so many to choose from. There's so many. I think not having really clear structure about how to handle things, conflict issues, you know, complaints, concerns, how to handle differences in personality or differences in approach. I mean, we all practice differently as clinicians, and there is a lot of room and a lot of variance in the way that we practice, the way that we do our work under the code of ethics. Um, Again, we don't have time to get into all that, but I think having predictable, clear structure that says if A happens, then B will happen. If C happens, then D will happen. If right, that it's predictable, it's consistent, and it's clear for people. I don't have any dreams of being a practice mogul and growing my group practice to 6,000 clinicians and, selling it for, you know, 7, 8 figures. I'm an owner operator. I still want to see clients. I became a therapist to be a therapist and not become a business owner. So everybody has a different perspective on that part. But like I still want to operate this practice in a way that like is reflective of my identity, my ethics, my values, and I want people to know that right off the bat, and then if it doesn't work for them, no harm, no foul. I don't take it personally, as much as I cannot take it personally, right? Everybody says that, if they get fired by a client or a clinician leaves or something, like, I don't take it personally, it's just business. It's like, well, it's a little personal though. Like, it's a little personal. So having predictable structure, I would say, has been my biggest growth area.
It's always great to have milestones. That way you make things more measurable, if you're on the right track or not.
Yep.
Uh, based on that, you have a lot of experience. I mean, you said you love working with clients. That's amazing. But you also have something else you're working on the side as a behavioral health recruiter. And you've been doing that for around 3 years or so.
Well,
How has
with my own shop, yeah, I started dabbling in a decade ago as a contract
Mhm.
recruiter for various organizations. I was always thinking I have to do something else besides depend solely on my direct client practice work for income, because when I do that, something changes in the way that I practice, in my perspective and curiosity around helping clients, and I don't like it. That happened to me in my very first, job for the agency when, I was a new parent and a new therapist, and my income would fluctuate, up to $1,000 a month depending on cancellations, and I said, "I can't solely depend on these clients to meet with me to be able to pay my bills." Because then I start to see them in a certain kinda way when they don't wanna meet with me, and I don't like that. I don't like that. So I need to, like, find a way to diversify income streams. And I always thought, well, recruiting, it's a people-centered work, right? Why wouldn't therapists, mental health professionals, clinicians who work with people, be good at this work? So I dabbled in it, kind of as a contract, part-time side hustle thing, up until about 3 years ago, and then I finally opened my own shop, and I have two other associate recruiters. Shout out to Erica and Chelsea, who are also clinicians themselves. And I thought, who better to recruit behavioral health clinicians than behavioral health clinicians who know what all the letters and the acronyms mean after the alphabet soup at the back of our titles and whatnot. And it's been a really fun way to still be in the field, work in the field, uh, provide outcomes for therapists who are looking for new work that bring them more professional fulfillment, which in turn provides better clinical service to the public, right? Having therapists and behavioral health clinicians in the right jobs where they are happy, fulfilled, doing their best work, that only benefits the field and that only benefits the public in terms of the kind of service that they're getting.
So you're having a lot of hats, is what I'm hearing, to put on throughout the week, the day, the month, and just now too. I'm looking at your what is that? A Peaky Blinders hat?
That's right. I love the Peaky Blinders. It's a great show. Yeah.
Lovely, lovely. So with all those hats you have to be putting on, as well being a father, on top of all those things, how do you balance your personal and your professional life?
I knew you were gonna ask this question. And my standard response when people ask me that is not well. Well, I don't balance it well. I don't like, yeah, I have a little bit of a vendetta against the idea of balance. Um, Maybe people listening will remember it. Like I loved the seesaw as a kid, right? My brother and I always used to sit on the seesaw and, we'd count like the amount of time, how long we could stay there where we were perfectly balanced, and we didn't like fall down, and it was short lived every single time, right? Because I'd move or he would move, and then it burp, and it's out of balance. Uh, I like music. I'm a amateur musician. Grew up in a household full of musicians. Extended family are musicians. The concept of harmony means more to me, or speaks more to me than balance. If you've listened to a good piece of music, a good composition, you know that there are certain parts that come out louder at times and then they're quieter at times, right? Uh, I played concert band in high school, and we used to joke that the trumpets are in their own world all the time, right? It's the trumpet show all the time because they would just play loud the whole entire time, right? So when I look at my life and all the roles that I play, the hats that I wear, in order for it to sound good, if you will, certain parts have to be louder at times than others. There are times where I take on the practice owner part and it plays more loudly, and there are times where I take on the recruiter part and it goes more loudly. There are times where I take on the supervisor part as a clinical supervisor, and that's more loud or forefront, if you will. But I think balance, trying to achieve balance, is a bit of a fool's errand because we're looking for something to feel good all the time, and it's not going to. That's why Howard Schwartz better in my mind is how do you do all this stuff?
What's your zodiac, by chance?
What do you think my zodiac is?
Well, certainly not a Libra.
He's not
Uh,
winter. Can I narrow it down? Winter?
yeah, Capricorn.
I'm an Aquarius actually.
I see. Okay. Interesting you think that way. No, I think that's great. I mean, as a business owner, you know that there's a lot of always hats you have to put on. And sometimes one hat is definitely heavier than the others. But as like you said, there's certain points where it's just necessary. You have to do these things for things to, flow. So I have a question for you that is more business oriented now on the business side of being a business owner, practice owner, clinician as well. All these things, you have certain things that you are not taught in school on how to manage your own practice. What would you say are some of the things that have helped you the most as you've gone through this journey of owning your own practice and then eventually opening up your other business?
Yeah, I think finding other mentors. I got introduced to you guys through your free SEO offering. I didn't know what SEO was when I graduated. I'm like, that's an acronym. Is it a therapy modality? Like, is it ART, EMDR? What is that? SEO? Like, I didn't know what that meant. Um, Therapists, I think, are innately curious. We want to know how stuff works, right? From a procedural perspective, like how do we get from A to Z, and what are all the what are all the stops and mile, I think you said milestones, like they get us there. So finding good mentors, and then like learning to, how do I say this the right way? Embrace the idea that I can be a good therapist, provide a good clinical service, and still hold boundaries with clients around money, right? We are taught in graduate school to be martyrs, right? To set ourselves on fire, to set ourselves on fire so that other people can stay warm. And that's looked like historically really low pay, bad hours, bad positions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, how are we going to sustain ourselves as a field if we keep doing that? Burning ourselves out for other people. Like that's not going to work. So finding good mentors, learning about business processes and what they're called. Accounts receivable. What does that mean? Oh, that's how I get paid, right? Accounts receivable. Operations, right? What is that? What is marketing? Therapists are taught to be demure, to be, hidden, to not self-promote in any kind of way. And that's just not true. Like, we absolutely can ethically self-promote ourselves. Like, we can help people. We have skills, services, ideas. We have things to offer people, and there's a way to do it that isn't about like exploiting others. That's the issue that I think that we are not really taught to understand or parse out well. So, like I said, good mentors, good books, podcasts like this. I listen to lots of podcasts. I didn't do that early in my career, and I've been doing that now. Like, I can't believe how much time I could have spent learning by just listening to a podcast while I'm taking a walk, or doing the dishes, or folding laundry, or something. Like, even if it's 1 to 2 content points, it's still something that I learned and I can put into practice. And then networking with other group practice owners, I think, is really important. I have a few group practice owners that I talk with on the regular about how they do things, and what I can learn from them, and that kind of thing. So those have been the main things that have helped me learn the business side of being a small business owner. Because they don't
Those are some
treat
actual gems.
me school. Yeah.
Seriously, some real gems here. A lot of practice owners have this do-it-yourself mentality, you know? So once you first start off, you just want to do it yourself. Yeah, exactly. We're strapping the whole system from the beginning. You know, what do boats like to say? It's like location or bust. So
Yeah. You got it.
doing all these things, having to learn all these little systems, these tools, resources, uh, you start from zero. Like, you're not educated on these things. With all the resources that are available right now, what are your favorite ones?
Man, my favorite ones. So, I do, yeah, I listen to, specific podcasts. We just switched, electronic health records, which has been a big undertaking. There's a lot of EHRs out there for therapists, as the business world, private equity world sees the demand in mental health service. The B2B, or business to business offerings to sell to therapists, have just exploded in the last 4 years. I get pitched daily on the next latest and greatest product that's going to help me do stuff. My favorite is when I get pitched on the oil and gas industry stuff on LinkedIn. I'm like, did you even read my? You didn't. Okay, you didn't read the profile. Great, cool. I'm like, not even close, not even close. Um, so I like that. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn just reading other people's content and the things that they put out there about what works for them and what doesn't. There's a lot of really fluffy, silly stuff out there, and I found a few content creators that I really like. Um, so yeah, those are the main things. There are certain conferences that I've checked out over the years in mental health that, maybe I've learned some things, maybe I haven't. Um, so I don't spend a ton of time or a ton of money on that. But I have a lot of colleagues that I network with, and we can keep each other, updated about, hey, did you read this thing that's happening? Or do you know about this latest thing or that? So really have a good network of people teaching me too.
Awesome. Andy, thank you so much for your time today. Everybody,
Yeah.
thank you so much for tuning in. Andy, where can people find you?
Yeah. So we just did a new website. for the group practice, it is sparrowwellness.health. Sparrow Wellness, just like it sounds, .health. And then the recruiting side is sparrowsearchservices.com. I like birds, so we kept that. I kept going with it. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there as well.
Andy, we'll drop all of your links down below in the description for this. So everybody, if you want to find Andy, if you want to reach out to him, learn from him, and just have a conversation, click those links, check that out down below. Andy, this was great. I feel like people are going to fill up multiple pages of notes just from
So I
listening.
hope so that somebody can parse out something from all the things that I've said.
That's why we love to do this. Andy, thank you so much for your time, man. It was absolutely great.
Of course, guys. Be well. Everybody have a good holiday and keep up the good work.
Until next time.
Take care.